Gil, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for being here.
I'm just enjoying every minute of this beautiful weather.
It is beautiful, and I want to talk to you about your history with Austin Country
All
Club
right.
because it goes back a long ways, but let's go back even further. Austin and your family and your history in this town, in this city, goes back how long?
1898.
Wow.
Yeah. In Hayes County.
Okay.
I lived on a ranch west of Buda,
Okay.
but I went to Buda School, went to Austin High School, then the university.
And you played golf at the University of Texas
Yes,
for Harvey Pinnock.
Harvey Pinnock, and 48, 49, 50, and 51. Yeah.
So by the time you went off to college, though, you were already a member at Austin Country Club, were you not?
Folks were. Yes.
Folks were.
Yeah. But see, we were first members in 44.
Okay.
So on Red River.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the club, which has had these three wonderful different sites, and now being here, and you were at both. So I want to talk.
I was
to
at all three.
You were at all three.
Yeah.
Starting at Hancock Park.
Yes.
And then moving over to the Riverside.
Yeah.
Site.
Right.
And then here in 1984, but 1944, 80 years ago from right now,
Yeah.
your family became members
Yes.
at this club. How much nourishment and joy did this club give you throughout your life?
Oh, it was just wonderful. It's the only place you could get a beer. Of course, I wasn't drinking when I was 15, but it was nice. It was a nice golf course. We had to buy city water, so only the greens were watered, and the tee boxes, the fairways weren't watered.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no back then. You didn't have centerline irrigation. Everything there was very little water put on a golf course.
That's right.
You know, 75, 80 years ago.
Right. That's right.
So, your interest in golf, do you remember where it started?
Yes, because I was on the high school tennis team, and somehow I got crosswise with the tennis coach. My fault. So I decided to play golf, and started playing golf at Muni in 1942.
Wow.
When I was 13.
Okay.
And I played from then on and kept playing and played in Austin High. Then I played for university. Yeah.
What was it about the game of golf that you got from it that maybe you didn't get from tennis? What did you enjoy so much about it?
Well, it was outdoors.
Yep.
And you were your own. You were own. You didn't have any.
It was all on you.
But even though a kid from Iowa won the state boys doubles championship in 1944 tennis.
Wow.
At the Pinnock courts at the University of Texas, when they were in the northwest corner there by the stadium.
Okay.
And that was, we were 15 and under.
Wow.
And but then we started playing. And the golf course on Riverside was finished in 48, but the club house wasn't finished for a year or so after that, but we started playing golf out there. And I actually played matches in the Southwest Conference at Hancock.
Okay.
But then if it was A&M, we would play at Muni, because at Muni there was a lot more local knowledge that gave you an advantage. And we needed all the advantage we could get against the Aggies.
So did you play, when you were a boy and your parents had become members of the club, did you play golf with your dad?
He never played golf. He was a polo player.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So was it you finding friendships and relationships with boys your age when you started playing golf?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Were there other kids that you grew up with that went on to the University of Texas as members of the golf team like you were?
Oh, Morris Williams was by far number one. He was a great golfer.
Yep.
I wasn't in his league at all, but he was a year behind me in school. But then we played together for Harvey at UT.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Harvey, because he's a member of the World Golf Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
as he rightly should be.
Yeah.
His imprint on players who had Hall of Fame careers, like Kathy Whitworth
Yeah.
and Sandra Palmer and Betsy Rawls and
Yeah.
Tom Kite and Ben Crenshaw, but it's the other thousands of people
Yeah.
like yourself that he impacted. What do you remember most about being around him?
Well, he wouldn't tell you much. In other words, if he had like Furyk with that funny swing, he would not have touched the swing. He liked the grip and the stance. And he said, just clip it off, just clip it off the tee. But he never told you much.
Right.
But that was the beauty of him.
One of the things, Gil, that I have heard through the years about Harvey, and one of the reasons why he was such an effective teacher and instructor, is that he did not talk about negatives. He didn't talk about things you did wrong.
Absolutely.
He only wanted to accentuate and talk about things and give you positive reinforcement. Was that your experience?
Yes, and with what you got. In other words, he didn't change anything. You know,
Right.
that was the beauty of it. That he didn't change your swing or something. Now he might tell you that the whole club, because sometimes you let the club get away from your little finger if you're right-handed. He made you hold it, but otherwise he wouldn't tell you much at all. He'd just clip it off. But he was wonderful. And you know what? I never played a hole of golf with him.
Wow.
He never played with the team.
Never did.
Never did.
So what did he do? Did he just walk around and observe you guys playing? But
Yeah.
and did when you were playing obviously competitive rounds, did he ever talk to you in the middle of competition?
No, because he wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
In other words, he'd give us two golf balls, and then a little bit of money, and we'd go off to Fort Worth to play at Colonial or Ames, Iowa, or Albuquerque, New Mexico, but he'd give you two golf balls.
So those two golf balls were intended to last you for a whole college golf tournament?
Yep.
And how much of an allowance was he giving you? Maybe what, a couple dollars?
Oh yeah, it wasn't much, because you could get a lunch at in a small city. You could get a nice lunch for 50 or 60 cents.
Yeah.
And that was 3 vegetables, a meat, a drink, and a dessert.
Wow. It's such good fortune for us to be able to talk to somebody who had experiences at all three sites.
Somebody that's old.
Well,
go ahead and say it.
Well, long life is a reflection of somebody who's lived life.
Yeah.
And clearly is somebody who loved to fish, hunt, ski, play golf. You had a very, very active, full life. Let's talk about the 3 different club locations. What do you remember most about the Hancock Park location?
Well, the first hole you had to lay up was a par 4, and you lay up before a ravine. But then it was, then we had to walk across the street on 4. That's where the clubs sold that 40 acres to the city. And I think they got $196,000 for 40 prime acres.
Very prime.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, very well. Harvey would actually be downstairs. He would clean the golf clubs for the people, for the members. He had a little wheel like a emery wheel.
Right.
And he would clean all the golf clubs.
Wow.
But,
he would do everything.
Everything, yeah.
So the Riverside location, what do you remember about that?
Well, what was interesting about that was Mr. Perry. There was an older gentleman here that was one of the founders of Austin, Edgar Perry Sr. He offered to give the Austin Country Club enough acreage there, kind of where Highland Park School is.
Right.
If they'd build there. But they didn't have any soil.
Okay.
And they didn't have any water, because they didn't realize you can truck in soil and you can pipe in water.
Mm-hmm.
And so they moved out to Riverside because they got 350 acres. I think they paid $300 an acre for it because it was on the river and was good soil.
Mm.
It was a Grove property.
Okay.
And we built out there, and it was a nice track, but nobody wanted to drive that far. It got to where we were dying on the vine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you remember, I know because you and I were talking about you buying property at this site in 1984. Pete Dye builds the golf course, the club opens. Not an easy transition from the Riverside location to come over here. Was it a hard process?
Was it a hard do you have all afternoon?
We do.
Well, it turned out that the membership was getting older and older. And back then, we had an initiation fee was $500. And we didn't have it wasn't a stock corporation until they decided to move, and they assessed everybody $500, and they gave them a share of Austin Country Club stock, and they took that money to build the golf course. And then I forget the older gentleman, he was head of IRS here, he says, because the club was supposed to lease the property from the corporation, and they got to where they were co-mingling everything, and he said, you're going to get in trouble with the IRS, so you need to do one or the other. So they liquidated the corporation and gave all the members another certificate of membership.
Okay.
Because I'm not a lawyer, but I remember reading, because I helped rewrite the bylaws in '79. The charter says, and apparently the charter takes precedent over any bylaws. And the charter says, I remember almost exactly, says, the assets of the Country Club of Austin shall be in those persons who from time to time are members in good standing.
Mm.
And that was it. I don't think the charter's that long.
Right.
And so it turned out when we moved, everybody had another certificate of membership. Well, you don't need two certificates of membership.
Right.
Instead of selling it for $500, that $300. I gave mine to Roy Bechtel.
Okay.
You know, and of course Roy's still a member here, but there were some people from the municipal golf course. They could they could take a certificate of membership and play golf 4 days a week.
Okay.
And they were good folks, but they were smart. But they kept the golf clubs in the car. They changed the shoes in the car. They bought the golf balls at Walmart. And they voted against everything. If you needed a new tennis net, they'd vote against it. Then, back it up a little bit, Walter Benson was a fine golfer. His dad was one of the founders. And he and I looked at this property here. There were 1,000 acres.
Yep.
A perfect rectangle. And we looked at it in 1947 or 48. It was $48 a share. I mean, an acre.
Right.
They wanted $48,000.
Wow.
For 1,000 acres with a half a mile of frontage on the river. So anyway, getting back to Corby and his family bought the property.
Yep.
Corby Robertson. And he started coming to us. I want to build a subdivision of it, but I want a golf course. And he said that I'll make a deal with the Austin Country Club. Well, a lot of those older members, especially the ones that were playing for almost for free, voted against it. We took 3 votes.
Mm.
The first 2 got voted down. The third time I was on the board, we had to guarantee the non-voters, I think $2,500 just to go away.
Wow.
You know, and so we finally got approval to move, and so we made a deal with Corby. He was going to build a golf course, and he was not going to expose any of the members more than a couple of $1,000, because we still had a lot of unsold resident memberships. We had some tennis memberships, social memberships, and junior memberships. Corby was going to buy them all, and he put a figure on them. And that's how we got the money. And then we had trouble. Tom Kite's dad, Mr. Kite, recommended we get Pete Dye.
Mm-hmm.
And I never heard him. I'd heard of Mr. Trent Jones.
Yep.
Because I've been in his office in New York City. 20 Vesey Street. We went because I was on the Parks Board here when we were building a municipal at Morris Williams.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to him and see if he might be interested in helping with a public course. Well, he wasn't. But I'm jumping around. I got to get back on phase. But there were my good friend, I hate to talk about good friend, he's dead now, but Lou Canati was my dentist, my good friend. But he and William Cromwell and I were on a committee to get it moved. William Cromwell was president, didn't have time. He ran Capital Chevrolet. Lou was busy with his dentistry, and I was retired. But anyway, so Lou was concerned about the cost of the club, so he kept bugging Pete Dye, who incidentally stayed at our house both times he was in Austin. He'd stay with us over here, live with us. But and I said, Lou, it doesn't matter if it's $1 million over budget. He's going to adjust how much he gives us for these unused. So it's like unused times X equals the cost of the thing. If the cost goes up, it gives. And so Pete Dye and Roy and somebody else came out here to Davenport Ranch, and somehow we bought a 6-pack of Coca-Colas or something. It was cold. It was January. Looking over, Corby was here too. Corby and Pete and Roy and I. And Pete took this brown paper sack and split it open like this. And he started up in the woods over here for about an hour. Pete, where are you? I'm designing a golf course. Be back afterward. He came back on this brown paper sack, drawing holes.
Wow. Which
I wish I'd kept to put it in a frame. I don't know whatever happened to it. It's probably gone. But I'll never forget. He said, oh, I don't have but 17 holes. So he came up and added number 8. Are you familiar with number 8?
Yes.
A little short hole over
yes.
on the range. So now I got 18. And so anyway, finally, Lou got to harassing Pete so much, he finally says, we're going to get another opinion. So they called Robert Trent Jones Sr.
Yep.
And offered him $5,000 to come down and give us what's called a routing.
Yes.
Which just means something kind of like Pete did on the paper. And Lou played with some guys that were, and I know him, played golf with them, but they were the anti-moving people. So they got this routing, and it had holes that were, part of the nine was down below the hill and back up. Other part was down the hill and back up. And they had to walk a long ways between them because, Trent Jones, of course, you ride a golf course,
Sure.
but there was a long walk between the greens and the next tee box. And Lou and his buddies didn't like that at all. So they go back to William and says, so I go to William, I says, I know where Pete is. He's in Dallas. Says, I'll fly up to Dallas and I'll talk to him. So I flew up to Dallas, rented a car. I knew he was at the Shady Oaks or one of those courses.
Sure.
And I go out there in a golf cart. Somebody takes me, I didn't know where he was. Said, Gil, what in the hell are you doing here? Well, I need to talk some business with you. Well, okay, we went back. He said, we want you to come back. He says, I'm not coming back. I said, Pete, he says, I'll come back on one condition. Please don't let Dr. Canati bug me about a set of plans he can bid, because it didn't matter what the bid was. We were covered.
Sure.
So anyway, we hired him back and everything worked out. But it was a knockdown, drag out. And like I said, I was in the middle of it. I mean, I went with Corby and I went with his lawyer and all that because I had the time.
Sure.
But
well, you got it done, and here we sit.
But I
40
did.
years
I got
later.
it done because I was a master sergeant that did all the work. I wasn't the smart one. I just was there.
Well, thank you for being here today.
But
thank you for taking the
anyway,
time to share.
It's been. But anyway, getting back. Let me tell you something else. Gene and I have a home in Colorado. Like I say, just me now. And we were up there, and Corby calls me on the phone. This was in the early 80s. Times were good. Real estate was getting hot. He says, I'll build you a ballroom if you can get me 50 non-resident memberships.
Mm.
I said, I don't think that would be a problem at all. I says, would you put a limit on how much they can play so they just can't come up there in the summer and play 100 days? And, oh, he said, fine. I said, like 20 or 30 rounds a year? Oh, yeah. So I called Bill Gaynor, my old schoolmate. That's another story. Takes longer than we got. I don't want anything else to do with Corby Robinson. We got to do it ourselves because we're getting near the end of the construction. I said, Bill, I says, he's going to build us a ballroom. I said, we can put the pro shop and the golf carts under the ballroom right here and just open up on number one. Well,
sure.
Do I have time for another story?
Well, I think we've got somebody else. She gave me 5 minutes, like 15 minutes
Okay,
ago.
all right.
But that was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, yeah.
You were awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. All right.
We release you.
Now, do you still watch golf on television?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I watched Sam Snead win the Masters in 1952.
Wow.
Yeah. In person. I was stationed there.
Let me take this mic off you, boss, and I'll
Thank
get
you.
the next interview set up.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling your story.
Yeah.
So, did you go to the Masters other years than 52?
No.
That was it.
That was it. Yeah.
One time, and Sam
Hey.
Snead won it.
What is your
Wow.
Yeah.
Some water, maybe?
Yes, thank you very much.
Of
You
course.
did. But the interesting story that I'll tell you. We had a poker group that played. One of them was a professor of architecture engineering. And we started talking about the carts underneath. Well, remember, I'm a petroleum engineer, so I know chemistry, and he says, it's dangerous. He said, when you recharge golf carts, they give off hydrogen. They give about that much. This is dangerous. I said, Frank, they do it at Dallas Country Club. They do it at all the golf courses in Palm Springs. They do it at Cherry Hills, which I was a member of in Denver.
Yeah.
And
Well, you should see that place now.
it's all right.
$100 million clubhouse redo. 100 million.
See, I got out because I was a non-resident member, but living in Steamboat, I never used it.
Yeah.
But
It's unbelievable. I've never seen
Did
anything
you ever
like it.
play that golf course?
Yeah, I was there 2 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah. And they
I
had
was
the
there
US
4
Amateur.
years,